Trey, you also like focusing on the defensive interior. You've got a front four guy, you've got a linebacker as well. For your first defensive player to watch on breakout watch for this season, which way are you going?
Yeah, let's keep it on the defensive line and let's keep it in the SEC as well. Mason Smith from LSU is my breakout candidate for 2023. And, this is kind of cheating. I think if you could take the time machine back to last spring, you probably saw Mason Smith on a lot of breakout lists for 2022. The reason that he didn't actually get to, if you recall, he was injured. He tore his ACL celebrating a defensive play in the first game of the season, the first possession of the season, I believe, against Florida State for LSU. So he just completely lost his second year of college. But back as a freshman, he really flashed a lot of potential for LSU. He had 4 sacks, a lot of tackles for loss, 19 total tackles as a freshman interior defensive lineman. That might not sound like eye-popping numbers, but as a rotation player, as a freshman in the SEC, that's really impressive to me to total those, especially the 4 sacks and getting to the quarterback as an interior defensive lineman. We talk about Barry Alexander with the explosion and a big body. Mason Smith is really, really similar. So he's standing right now at 6'5", 316 is the most recent update that I can find. Top 20 player coming out of high school in the class of 2021. He was the number one player in Louisiana, top 5 defensive lineman in the entire country. And as a freshman, he lived up to that potential. And I was really upset and bummed that we didn't get to see how far he had grown from year 1 to year 2 last year. But all signs point to him being healthy by the start of this fall. I know he's been in and out of participation this spring for LSU. He started as a non-contact participant as he nurses that knee back to health. But as we get further and further in the treatment of these ACL injuries, I'm less concerned about getting that explosion. Like I've heard some doctors say it's almost better to have your ACL repaired in modern times because that explosion almost gets even better with a repaired ACL. So not saying that it's definitely a good thing or, you shouldn't go out to seek your ACL, obviously, but I'm not worried about that with Mason Smith. And I think he's going to be a key feature of this LSU defensive front that I think really missed him down the stretch last year. You see what really cost LSU in some of those big games, especially at the end of the year with A&M and Georgia. They just really couldn't plug up those holes up the middle. They were really struggling against later on in the season. They were really struggling to get the push on the defensive front. Mason Smith being back is going to really alleviate those problems. And he's another guy like Bear Alexander that I think they can put in different positions situationally. So if they need him to slide out and rush the passer a little bit, he's capable of doing that. If they want to put him inside and just let him be a people eater and wreak havoc and stop running backs at the line of scrimmage, he can do that as well. So with all the defensive talent that LSU is going to have, we know that they're going to have athletes all over the field. Mason Smith, I think, is going to finally get his chance to really show what he can do this year. And again, be one of those guys that we're talking about in NFL draft shows next year that an NFL franchise is going to be really coveting.
Yeah, I think you took the words right out of my mouth. I was wondering, hey, if Mason Smith is on this LSU squad, how does the end of last season turn out for him? Like, are we talking about an LSU team that went to the playoff? If Mason Smith was there, could plug up the run so they don't, end up losing that game in College Station, and then is able to maybe finish the season with a real close loss, maybe end up beating Georgia. I know they looked, up and down based on certain things. They really just could not stop the run at the end of last year. So you throw a guy in the middle of that defensive line like Mason Smith, he looks like he's the next big Louisiana animal, right? That massive dude coming out of Louisiana with just all the athletic ability in the world. He could be sort of that next great LSU defender, and possibly this year. I don't know how we think they're going to perform up and down versus expectations versus last year, but I mean, we could be talking about a much better, much more improved LSU team this year just by adding this one player into the mix. So I'm really curious to see where LSU goes with this. I think that's a great pick with Mason Smith.
Run defense was lacking certainly at times for the Tigers last year. So having him back, not going to hurt the pass rush versatility that we saw as well. You saw that he made what, 8 plays, was in on 8 snaps against Florida State in that season opener.
Hmm.
You
Yeah, and Florida,
saw.
like it really opened up the run game for Florida State. So you talk about, maybe not losing at the end of the year. that could have single-handedly flipped the Florida State game at the beginning of the year as well.
That was
So
a very close game. So
yeah,
yeah,
I mean that the one that came down to the blocked extra point.
yeah.
So his presence is going to be felt. It's going to be huge for them to get him back. And like I said, I'm not worried about the injury disrupting any explosion or athleticism that he has.
Gracious hip, how